What kind of town calls itself Christian, yet beats a woman in front of a church? That was the question hanging in the hot afternoon air, as Christina Brown stood trembling in the dust, her back bleeding, her dignity torn. The leather strap struck her shoulders again. The sound echoed against the small wooden church like thunder, sharp and cruel. Christina's knees had already given out, but the two men gripping her arms forced her upright. Blood soaked through her torn dress and dripped onto the ground. The townspeople watched in silence, some hiding their children's eyes, others whispering, and a few pretending this was justice. It was not justice. It was punishment for a woman who dared to live without a man. Mayor Frank Anderson stood before her, his face red with anger and pride as he raised the strap again. He acted as if he was a judge sent by God himself. "Confess your sins," he shouted. "Confess what you have done to shame this Christian town." Christina's hair clung to her face, messy with sweat and dirt. Her green eyes held no fear, only pain and exhaustion. She had committed no crime, but this town had made her their enemy simply because she lived alone and worked for her own survival. The next lash never landed. A sudden shadow covered her. The crowd went silent. The air itself seemed to pause. A man had stepped between Christina and the mayor, though no one had seen him approach. His presence felt like a solid wall, calm, unmovable, dangerous. Christina felt hands on her shoulders, not rough, not cruel, but gentle. A coat settled around her, warm and heavy, smelling of pine and smoke. For the first time in months, she did not flinch from a man's touch. "This ends now," the stranger said. His voice was low and steady, like stones rolling in a river. It was not loud, but every person heard him. The crowd stared as if a bear had walked out of the woods. Mayor Anderson lowered the strap, shocked. "This is not your concern, mountain man. She brought shame to our town." "What has she done?" the man asked. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair, and a face shaped by mountain wind and hard living. Christina didn't know his name yet, but the town did. Peter Howard, the silent mountain man who rarely came down from the hills. "She refuses to follow our rules," Anderson snapped. "She lives without a husband. She works like a man. She teaches women to be independent." "So her only crime is survival," Peter said. People shifted uncomfortably. The mayor looked around for support, but he felt the crowd slipping from his side. Peter stepped closer to Christina. He did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Release her. She comes with me." A few men stepped back. The way Peter stood, the quiet way he watched the crowd, made even the boldest man feel small. Everyone had heard stories about him. He lived alone in the mountains, and trouble always seemed to end quickly when he was involved. "She belongs to this community," Anderson insisted, but his voice shook. "She must pay her debts." "Send me the bill," Peter replied. "If there are real debts, I will pay them, but you will not touch her again." He offered Christina his arm. She tried to stand on her own, but her legs shook. Swallowing her pride, she held on to him. His touch was steady. Safe. As they walked away, fear rippled through the crowd. Anderson's voice rose again, loud but powerless. "If she leaves, she is banished forever." Peter didn't turn around. Good. They walked toward the edge of town. The farther they went, the quieter the voices grew, until the only sound was wind through the pine trees. Christina tried to speak. "I don't know why you helped me, but thank you." "No one deserves what they were doing to you," Peter said. "Not ever." He kept pace with her slow steps, ready to catch her if she fell. "My cabin is about 5 miles up the trail. Can you make it?" Quote. Christina nodded. She wasn't sure she could, but she would not show weakness. She had shown enough for one lifetime. The trail rose into the forest. With every step away from the town, Christina felt her body loosen. The air smelled of pine, earth, and freedom. By the time they reached the cabin, she was nearly fainting. Peter opened the door. The home was simple, clean, and warm. A fire burned softly. He set her in a chair near the hearth and gathered supplies. "This will hurt," he warned gently as he cleaned the wounds on her back. His hands were careful, respectful. He wrapped her injuries in clean cloth, no judgment, no demands, no greed in his eyes. When he finished, she swallowed hard. "You're not going to ask me to repay you?" Peter looked at her with a sadness she didn't understand. "What kind of men have you known that you expect that?" She looked down, ashamed. "The only kind I've ever met." His voice was firm, but soft. "Then you've known the wrong kind." He stood and stepped back to give her space. "Rest. There's a room for you. I'll sleep here by the fire." Christina walked into the small bedroom and lay down. For the first time in months, she felt safe. And as sleep pulled her under, one thought stayed with her. She had been saved by a man who said almost nothing, yet his silence spoke more kindness than any words ever had. Christina woke to the soft glow of morning sunlight, filtering through the small bedroom window. For a moment she did not move, unsure if the peace she felt was real or a dream. The gentle warmth, the crackle of firewood, the faint smell of pine drifting through the cabin. It did not match the world she came from, a world filled with fear, judgment, and harsh voices. Here the silence held no threat. Her back burned as she slowly sat up. The memory of yesterday flooded her mind, and her breath trembled. She had been beaten in front of a church. A crowd had watched. A man had stepped in. A man she did not know. Peter Howard. Christina stood when she gathered enough strength and opened the bedroom door. Peter was by the fire, stirring a pot over the flames. He looked up when he sensed her. "You should rest more," he said. "I didn't want to sleep too long," she replied softly, hesitant, unsure how to act around a man who had shown kindness without wanting anything in return. Peter handed her a bowl of broth. "You need food. Your body is weak." Christina held the warm bowl between her hands. She expected silence to feel awkward, but with Peter it did not. His quiet presence felt grounding, as if he respected silence rather than feared it. When she finished eating, she spoke carefully. "You risked a lot for me yesterday. The mayor, the people, they will not forget what happened." Peter sat across from her. His eyes were steady, calm. "I did what was right. Some things are worth standing up for." Christina studied him. She had learned to read men quickly for her own safety. Power, anger, selfishness. She had seen those traits many times. But Peter was different. His strength came from inside, not from a need to control others. "Why do you live out here alone?" she finally asked. Peter looked toward the window for a long moment before answering. "People can be cruel. The mountains are easier than people." Christina understood that more than he knew. She nodded. Peter didn't explain further, and she didn't push. Some wounds lived too deep for quick sharing. She knew that because she carried her own. The day passed in quiet routine. Peter chopped wood, checked traps, and tended to chores. Christina helped where she could, though her body ached with every movement. She folded blankets, swept the floor, and washed the dishes. The simple tasks felt strangely healing. As evening neared, Peter returned from outside, carrying 2 buckets of water. "Storm's coming tonight," he said. "The mountains get cold. You'll need more blankets." The thought of a storm made her flinch. Storms reminded her of nights when William had come home drunk and angry, when fear crept under the door like cold wind. "You're safe here," Peter said quietly, noticing her fear without her saying a word. She met his eyes. "I don't know how to believe that anymore." "You will," he replied. Night came, and with it came heavy rain tapping against the roof. The cabin glowed with warm firelight. Peter set a small herbal tea by her side to ease the pain in her back. Christina sat in the rocking chair, staring into the flames. The storm outside reminded her of her past, and the fire reminded her of where she was now, caught between fear and something she didn't dare call hope. "My husband used to say storms were God's anger," she whispered before she could stop herself. Peter looked up. "Storms are just storms. Weather does not judge us." Her throat tightened. No one had ever said something so simple yet so freeing. Later, when she returned to the bedroom, she paused in the doorway. Peter was rolling out his blanket by the fireplace again, sleeping near the door out of habit, as if he needed to protect the space. "You don't have to sleep on the floor," she said. "I can take the floor tonight." Peter shook his head. "I gave you my word you would be safe here." A word means nothing if I don't honor it." Christina's heart stirred at the honesty in his voice. She closed her door, lay down, and whispered into the darkness, "Safe." The word felt strange on her tongue, but it warmed her all the same. Days passed. Little by little, Christina healed. She walked more, ate more, and found moments of laughter she thought she had lost forever. Peter remained calm, steady, and respectful, never pushing, never asking for more than she could give. But the world outside had not forgotten her. One afternoon, while Peter was away collecting supplies from a nearby stream, Christina stepped outside to gather firewood. She froze when she saw 3 men riding up the trail toward the cabin. Her breath caught, fear surging through her body like ice. They stopped a few feet away, staring at her with cold eyes. The man in front tipped his hat with a smirk. "Well, look what we found," the runaway troublemaker. Her blood turned cold. "We came to take you back," the man said. "The mayor wants to finish what he started." Christina backed toward the cabin, her heart pounding. Peter was nowhere in sight. She was alone. She could barely breathe. The men stepped off their horses. "Don't make this hard," one warned. Christina forced herself to stand tall, though her legs trembled. She had escaped once. She would not go back. Not alive. "We will not ask again," the leader said, reaching for her. A branch cracked in the woods. The men stiffened. Peter stepped out from the trees, silent as a shadow, his expression like stone. He stopped between Christina and the intruders, one hand on the handle of his hunting knife. "You should leave," Peter said, calm yet deadly clear. The men exchanged unsure glances, but didn't move. Peter took one slow step forward, last chance. His voice was ice, and the mountain behind him was quiet, as if holding its breath. The men mounted their horses without another word and rode away, the threat not gone, but delayed. Christina's knees weakened with relief. Peter looked at her, his face softening. "They will be back," she whispered. "I know," Peter said, "but they will not touch you, not while I breathe." And for the first time, Christina fully believed him. Wait, before we move on, what do you think about the story so far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to know. The warning visit changed everything. Christina slept lightly that night, listening to the wind push against the cabin walls. Every creak made her wonder if the men had returned. She lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, fear spreading inside her like a cold tide. Peter was awake too. She could hear the quiet shift of his footsteps near the fire. He was watching over the cabin, keeping guard. His presence should have comforted her, yet the fear of losing the small safety she'd found kept her heart racing. By morning, she stepped outside and saw Peter chopping wood. His movements were steady, controlled. Too controlled. His jaw was tight, his eyes focused in a way that told her he was preparing for something. She approached him slowly. "Peter, I don't want to be the reason trouble comes to your door." He placed the axe down and looked at her. "You are not trouble. The men who hurt you are." "They won't give up," she said. "I've seen the way men, like the mayor, hold power. They don't stop until they win." Peter shook his head. "I'm not worried about them." But Christina was. She had learned the cost of becoming a target. It was not only her safety at risk now, but his too. Later, while Peter tended to the animals behind the cabin, Christina walked a little farther down the path. The air smelled of pine and morning dew. Birds called from the trees. Nature didn't judge her. The forest didn't whisper gossip about her past. Here, she could breathe. For the first time, she wondered, could she stay? Could she build a life away from the cruelty of the world below? When she returned, Peter was on the porch sitting on the steps, sharpening a knife. She sat beside him, leaving a respectful space between them. "You don't have to protect me forever," she whispered. "I don't want to be a burden." Peter kept his eyes on the blade, his voice calm. "You are not a burden. You needed help. I gave it. That is all." Christina looked at him, her voice trembling. "People don't help like that without wanting something in return." He finally turned to her, his gaze firm. "I don't want anything from you, Christina. You can stay as long as you need, or leave when you're ready. The choice is yours." No man had ever given her a choice before. The weight of that kindness hit her harder than any whip ever had. Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them away. Before she could speak, a gunshot echoed through the valley. Peter stood at once, knife in hand. "Inside, now!" Christina rushed in as Peter scanned the woods. Another gunshot followed, closer this time. The men had returned, and this time they hadn't come to talk. The cabin door rattled. A voice shouted, "Peter Howard! Hand over the woman, and we might let this go!" Quote. Peter spoke quietly without looking away from the door. "Get to the back room and stay low." Christina wanted to argue, to stand with him, but the look in his eyes told her he needed her safe. She moved quickly. The front door burst open. The men stormed inside. Peter was ready. He moved with the speed of a man who had fought for his life before. He grabbed the first man's coat and shoved him into the wall. The second swung at him, but Peter blocked and struck back, knocking the man to the ground. The leader raised his gun at Peter. Christina acted before thinking. She grabbed a pan from the table and struck the man's arm. The gun fired into the ceiling. Peter lunged, disarming him with one swift motion. The fight ended as quickly as it began. The men stumbled outside, bruised and shaken. Peter followed them to the clearing. "If you come back here," Peter warned, his voice low and fierce, "you won't walk away next time." The men mounted their horses and fled, disappearing down the trail. Christina stood in the doorway, shaking. When Peter turned back to her, she rushed to him, not thinking, just feeling. She wrapped her arms around him. He froze, surprised, then slowly held her in return. She buried her face against his chest and let her tears fall. "You could have been killed," she whispered. "So could you," he said. "I won't let that happen." She pulled back enough to see his face. His eyes, usually guarded, were gentle now. "Why did you save me, Peter? Truly?" He hesitated, then spoke softly. "Because once, no one saved my family. I couldn't change that, but I can choose who I stand for now." Emotion swelled inside her, gratitude, sorrow, something warmer than either. She placed her hand on his chest. "You didn't just save my life, you gave it back to me." Time passed. The men did not return. Word spread that Peter Howard had claimed Christina under his protection, and no one in Cedar Falls dared challenge him again. Christina slowly learned to smile again, to trust, to breathe without fear. One crisp morning, as autumn leaves began to fall, she found Peter building an extra room onto the cabin. She smiled softly. "Planning to take in more broken souls?" He looked at her with a warmth she had never seen before. "Just making room for someone who deserves a place to stay if she wants it." Christina stepped closer. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was imposing. She felt like she belonged. "I do want it. Not because I need protection anymore, but because I choose to stay." Peter nodded, slowly, as if her words settled something in him he had carried for years. He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. Together they stood on the porch, looking out over the mountains that had brought them both pain and healing. Christina had once believed her story would end in that dusty churchyard, broken and forgotten. But standing beside Peter, with a future she never thought possible, she understood something. Sometimes life begins again in the most unexpected place, with the most unexpected person. She had found safety and something far deeper, someone who saw her as more than a burden or a sin, someone who held her without words long before he ever held her hand. And in the quiet strength of his presence, Christina Brown found the home she never thought she deserved.